You did the math once, maybe on your phone, maybe on a napkin, maybe in your head at 2 in the morning. You typed in what you were earning, what you were saving, and you projected it out 30 years. The number looked fine, manageable. You'd get there. What you didn't do, what almost nobody does, is type in what that same number looks like if you start 5 years later. That's the version nobody shows you. That's the version that would have kept you up all night. Most people treat investing like a task they'll get to when things settle down, when the car is paid off, when the move is done, when the kids are a little older, when the salary goes up. There's always a logical reason to wait, and the reason always sounds responsible. It isn't. The 5-year delay is the most expensive financial decision most people make, and they make it passively, not through a bad choice, but through no choice at all. They don't decide to wait. They just don't start. And every month that passes feels indistinguishable from every other month, until one day it isn't. Here's what actually happens during those 5 years. The market doesn't wait. Compound interest doesn't pause. The growth that would have been yours, the returns on the returns, starts building for someone else who did start. And the cruel part is this: the years you miss at the beginning are worth more than the years at the end. The first decade of investing is where the largest portion of your eventual wealth is seated, not the last decade, the first. So, if you're 30 years old and you're waiting until you're 35 to start, you're not just losing 5 years of contributions, you're losing the compounding on those contributions for the next 30 years. You're losing the compounding on that compounding. The math becomes recursive in a way that most people don't feel in their gut until they finally see it written out. I'm Arthur, and today we're going to look at exactly what 5 years costs, in real numbers, on real timelines, across scenarios that look a lot like your actual life, not to make you feel bad, to make the math impossible to ignore. If you want more of this, clear numbers, no jargon, no noise, subscribe. Let's start with the baseline. You're 30 years old. You have nothing saved yet. That's not unusual. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances, the median retirement savings for Americans aged 35 to 44 is $45,000. For the 25 to 34 age group, it's closer to $20,000. Most people are starting from very little, very late. You are not behind in a way that's unique to you. You are behind in a way that is statistically normal. That doesn't make it fine. It makes it fixable. Now let's say you can invest $500 a month. That's $6,000 a year. Not a dramatic number. Not a sacrifice that requires a lifestyle overhaul for most people with a decent income. Just $500 a month consistently into a low-cost index fund returning an average of 7% annually after inflation. That's the S&P 500's historical average return, inflation adjusted, going back to 1928. 7% is the number financial planners use as a conservative real return estimate. We'll use it throughout. You start at 30. You invest $500 a month. You don't touch it. You retire at 65. That's 35 years of investing. At the end of that 35 years, you have approximately $887,000. Now the same scenario, same person, same $500 a month, same 7% annual return, but you wait 5 years. You start at 35 instead of 30. You now have 30 years of investing instead of 35. At the end, you have approximately $567,000. The difference is $30,000. You waited 5 years, and it cost you $30,000, not $30,000, not the 5 years of contributions you missed, which would be $320,000. That's 10 times what you actually failed to put in. The compound growth on the compound growth on the compound growth. That's where the $290,000 above your missed contributions comes from. And you need to understand something about that $320,000 gap. You cannot close it by contributing more later. That's the trap people fall into. They think, if I just increase my contribution in my late 30s and 40s, I'll make up the difference. You won't. Not fully. The math doesn't allow it. Let's prove that. Say you waited until 35 to start, but at 35, instead of $500 a month, you contribute $1,000 a month. You doubled your contribution. Surely that closes the gap. At 7% annual return, investing $1,000 a month from age 35 to 65, 30 years, you end up with approximately $1,034,000. So with double the monthly contribution starting at 35, you surpass the person who started at 30 with $500 a month. You end up with about $247,000 more. Fine. But here's the question you should be asking. What if the person who started at 30 also increased to $1,000 a month? 35 years at $1,000 a month at 7%. approximately 1,074,000. You're still 670,000 behind. You doubled your contribution, and you still can't close the gap that 5 years opened. This is the central fact, the one that reframes everything about when versus how much. Starting 5 years earlier is not equivalent to contributing more. It is better than contributing more, often dramatically better, because the earliest years of compound growth are the most powerful years. The money you put in at 30 is not the same as money you put in at 40. It has more time to compound. It contributes more to your final number. Its contribution is magnified by decades of returns. There's a concept behind this that most people have heard of, but very few have actually felt: the time value of money. $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. Not because of inflation, because of what $1 today can become if it's working. $1 invested at 30 has 35 years to grow at 7%. That dollar becomes 10.68 by age 65. $1 invested at 35 has 30 years. It becomes 7.61. The difference between those $2 is not a small rounding error. Across thousands of dollars of monthly contribution over decades, that difference is exactly the 320,000 gap we just calculated. Let's make this even more concrete. Let's talk about the single most misunderstood concept in personal finance: what your early contributions are actually worth. Of that final 887,000, the portfolio of the person who started at 30, how much came from contributions? You put in $500 a month for 35 years. That's $210,000 in total contributions. The remaining $607,000 came purely from compound growth. You contributed $210,000. The market gave you $677,000 on top of that. Now, of the person who started at 35, total contributions over 30 years, $180,000. Final portfolio, $567,000. The market gave them $387,000. Same contribution rate, 5-year head start. The difference in market-generated wealth, $607,000 versus $387,000. That's $290,000 in growth that the late starter will never see, not because they invested less, but because they gave the market less time. The money you put in doesn't just grow, it grows on the growth. Then it grows on the growth on the growth. The compounding is recursive. And the earlier you start, the more recursive cycles you capture. Here's where most people lose the thread. They focus on the end number. They look at 887,000 and think, that's not even a million. That's not enough anyway. And they're right that 887,000 in 2024 dollars, 35 years from now, needs context. But that number is in real terms, adjusted for inflation. In nominal terms, at 7% nominal return instead of real return, the same scenario produces a number closer to 2 million. We use the inflation-adjusted figure because it tells you what your money will actually buy in purchasing power. Either way, the gap between starting at 30 and starting at 35 is not closing, it's growing. Let me show you the scenario that makes this most visceral. Two people, same age, 25, same income, same everything. Person A starts investing $300 a month at 25. At 35, 10 years in, they stop completely. They don't put in another dollar for the next 30 years. They just let it sit. Person B doesn't start until 35, but they invest $300 a month consistently from 35 to 65. 30 years of contributions. Who ends up with more money at 65? Person A contributed for 10 years, 36,000 total, then stopped. Person B contributed for 30 years, 108,000 total, 3 times as much. At 7% annual return, Person A, $300 a month from 25 to 35, then nothing for 38.8. After 10 years of contributions at 25 to 35, the portfolio reaches approximately 51,000. That 51,000 then compounds untouched for 30 years at 7%. 51,000 in point C8. EC, approximately 30,000. Person B, 3,000K, month from 35 to 65, 30 years of contributions, approximately 3,000. Person A, who stopped investing at 35, ends up with more money than Person B, who invested 3 times as much. Person A contributed 36,000. Person B contributed 108,000. Person A wins by about 48,000. That is the power of starting early. It is not a metaphor, it is arithmetic. And before you say, but I didn't start at 25, that's fine. The principle doesn't change. It applies at every age. Starting at 30 instead of 35 is the same structure. Earlier beats later. and earlier beats more. And the earlier you fix the delay, the more of this dynamic you recover. The practical question is, what to do about it? And the answer is one of the simplest in personal finance, which is also why it tends to get ignored in favor of more complicated strategies. Start now, not next month, not after the car is paid off, not after you build up a cash cushion first. Right now, with whatever you have. This is not motivational language. This is the math. Every month of delay costs you money at a rate that accelerates over time. The cost of waiting goes up the longer you wait. The penalty is not linear. It compounds. If you have access to a 401k with an employer match and you are not contributing enough to capture the full match, that is the first thing to fix. An employer match is an immediate 50% or 100% return on your contribution before the market does anything. If your employer matches 100% up to 3% of your salary and you earn $60,000 a year, that match is worth $1,800 per year, guaranteed. Risk-free, immediately. Passing on that is not caution. It is leaving money on the table at a rate of $1,800 a year, plus all the compounding that $1,800 would have generated over the next 30 years. After the match, maximize your Roth IRA if you're eligible. In 2024, the contribution limit is $7,000. That's $583 a month. The money grows tax-free. You don't pay taxes on the gains when you withdraw in retirement. Over 30 years, the tax advantage alone is worth tens of thousands of dollars. For a younger investor, the Roth IRA is frequently the highest leverage financial tool available, and most people either aren't using it or aren't maxing it. After that, additional contributions to the 401k up to the annual limit of $23,000 in 2024, then taxable brokerage accounts if you have more capacity. None of this requires picking stocks. None of it requires timing the market. A target date fund or a simple 3-fund portfolio, U.S. total market, international, bonds, does everything most investors need without any ongoing management. Set it up. Automate the contributions. Do not touch it. That's the system. The difficulty isn't the system. The difficulty is the starting. Here's the last thing to hold on to. The math we've walked through today isn't designed to show you what you've lost. It's designed to show you what is still available. If you're 30 and you start today, the person who started at 25 is ahead. You can't change that. But you are 35 years from retirement. The same compounding that made the early start so powerful is still available to you. A dollar invested today has 35 years to compound. That dollar becomes 10.68. If you're 35 and you start today, you have 30 years. A dollar invested today becomes 7.61. If you're 40 and you start today, you have 25 years. A dollar invested today becomes 5.43. These numbers are not consolation prizes. They are real. The compounding is real at every age. The only scenario where the math stops working in your favor is the one where you keep waiting. The 5-year gap is not a historical fact you carry with you. It's a decision you make or don't make today. The cost of not starting 5 years ago is already paid. The cost of not starting today hasn't been incurred yet. That's the distinction that matters. Start today. Automate it. Don't stop.